What are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
That was President Trump during the presidential debate on September 29th, responding after moderator Chris Wallace asked him if he would condemn and asked white supremacists and militia groups to stand down. Welcome to our second segment on our In Focus topic tonight, the dialogue of race in politics. Joining us live in studio tonight is Dr. Baodong Liu, professor of political science at the University of Utah. Dr. Liu, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Liu, let's use Burgess Owens as a jumping off point in our conversation. When he talks about race, he talks about his family being able to overcome racial hurdles and pursue the American dream in the U.S. He's expressed that he doesn't believe that systemic racism still exists, all while we're seeing social unrest all across the country focus on police brutality against people of color. Can you break down this strategy he's using and who he's trying to appeal to?
First of all, I enjoy your show, and this is a very informative and timely program. You have raised a very, very important question. Now, before we talk about the strategy of Owens, it is imperative for us to look at the structure of the electorate. Before a candidate has even started his or her campaign, it's imperative to ask who are the voters, how to win their votes. Now, if you look at the Congressional District number 4 in Utah, obviously there is a picture as a candidate you need to look at. That is the partisan distribution of this district. So if you look at the Republicans and Democrats in the House number 4 district, which I call CD number 4, it is clear the Republican Party has the advantage simply because there are more Republican voters than there are Democrats or independents. Now, the 2020 elections, from the top, the presidential election, down to the bottom, there are two dominant issues. Number one, obviously, it's about the COVID-19 crisis and the overall healthcare system. And number two, it is about the Black Lives Matter and police brutality. Both parties have made their distinctive positions, and voters have a choice to pick. Regarding the BLM, the Republican Party has had a position about how the party wants to move forward. And it's an overall theme of law and order. And so clear that Ms. Owens has taken positions that is very close to the Republican Party and even closer to President Trump. Now, taking that position sends a clear message to the voters that he wants to appeal to the white conservative Republican voters in CD4 of Utah.
All right, about 2 minutes left in this segment. CD4 consists of a good number of minority voters. This is expected to be a very close race, just like it was 2 years ago between McAdams and Love. Could this hurt Owens's chance of maybe winning over voters in CD4?
You raised another very good question. It is important indeed to look at the partisan distribution inside CD4. It is also vital to look at the racial makeup of CD4. And it's actually very clear to both candidates that winning this race cannot be just a matter of partisan appeal, because there are both very strong white electoral voting bloc, but also minority voters. Now, when you talk about minority voters in CD4, there are about 17% Hispanic voters and about 4% of Asian voters. It is true that African Americans are not a significant electorate in the CD4, and BLM certainly has a major focus on the Black Lives And therefore, it is clear that Mr. Owens is designing his message to try to appeal to not only the white conservative voters, but also perhaps conservative minority voters. However, it is also true that based on the Black Lives Matter movement, overall, the minority voters are more supportive of Black Lives Matter movement than the white electorate in general, especially the white conservatives. So there is a risk factor for Mr. Owens to think about whether he wants to appeal to the minority voters, especially the second most important issue on COVID-19 crisis. As we know, that this crisis has hit minority voters particularly and disproportionately, and there are Hispanic voters in the CD4 district. Therefore, it's a risk on the part of Owens' message. Maybe he will need to balance his strategy a little bit.
All right, Professor Liu, hold that thought. We have to take a quick commercial break. But when we come back, we will pick up our In Focus discussion on the dialogue of race in politics.
All he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division.
That was Democratic presidential nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden, talking about President Trump at the September 29th debate. President Trump later said during Thursday's debate that he was, quote, the least racist person in the room, and that he is the president that has done the most for the African American community since Abraham Lincoln. Welcome back to the third and final segment of our In Focus topic tonight, the dialogue of racism in politics. Before the break, Dr. Baodong Liu, professor of political science at the University of Utah, joined us live in studio to take a deeper look into the subject. Dr. Liu will pick up right where we left off. So I want to move into the broader picture of politics. As a scholar, how do you see race used as a strategy in campaigns?
That's a very, very good question. I'm so glad you raised this one, because if we look at the election or the campaign of Mr. Owens in CD4 of Utah, we have to think about the national picture, the broad picture, and the historical perspective. Whether or not Mr. Owens will win this race has a national implication. First of all, if we look at the overall historical trend, we can see, for instance, in the 2008 presidential election, there has been a national trend of getting more African Americans elected. And so race plays a big role, not only for the Democrats, but also for the Republicans. In the first term of President Obama's presidency, we saw that both Democrats and Republicans have made inroads into the African American communities. However, it is also true that the Democratic Party has been the main home of those black politicians who want to be elected to especially national offices such as U.S. Congress. But if we look at the Republican Party, that party has also tried to use race as a symbolic first take on politics to make people feel comfortable that there are minority voters, especially African American candidates that can win. And in the first term of Obama's presidency, we saw 50 Democratic elected African American politicians to the US Congress and 2 African American Republican candidates elected. In the second term, we had our own Mia Love from the Utah CD4. But President Trump's first term has not been very, very productive for the Republican Party as far as black Republican elected officials are concerned. So the fact that Mr. Owens is in the race, a very competitive race, and it's a neck and neck, it has a huge implication for the Republican Party. The story of Mr. Owens as a superstar in college football, but also NFL, has been an inspiring factor in his primary election. And he was able to use his national profile to make inroad into the white community, and especially served as a voice for white conservative voters. However, we need to see whether or not that kind of image will become a national phenomenon, especially if President Trump has a chance to win his second term. Mr. Owens will certainly become a national phenomenon. It will make Republican a party that in part of the country as a party of multiracial appeal. So that has a national impact for sure.
All right. Well, Dr. Liu, such an insightful conversation from you. I know we had a lot that we wanted to talk about, but we're actually almost up on time. So just wanted to thank you for being here. You've heard from Dr. Baodong Liu, professor of political science at the University of Utah. Thank you so much for spending your Friday evening with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoy talking with you.